Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I want to look at the week starting on Monday, January the 27th, 2025. It's a short video, and I start off by looking at the main astrological events in the week. For example, we've got a new moon, and then I have my special topic, and my special topic is going to be Pete Hegseth. So he's just been confirmed as the United States Secretary of Defense, and we do have a timed chart for him, which I'm going to look at. And I've got nothing against Pete Hegseth. I mean, I know that there are reasons why many in the Senate didn't want to confirm him, but I'm not convinced that it was a wise choice. Part of what I've been saying over the last few months is that there is a real danger that the United States gets itself into a war, because you've got Uranus moving into Gemini, this year, and over the next few years does look really dangerous. And unfortunately, Pete Hegseth seems to chime with this danger, and it's not necessarily his fault. I mean, maybe it's his destiny, but I do think it is an unwise choice, was an unwise choice, and I'll be explaining that later in the video. And at the end of the video, I look at the week from the perspective of the I Ching. So I do an I Ching, and I use the I Ching to give you an indication about what the week might be like. It gives an alternative view, a contrast to the astrology. And my I Ching reading has 4 sections. It has general section, then money, career, and then relationships. So let's start off by looking at the start positions, the positions of the planets right at the beginning of the week. Just a reminder, if you happen to enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I would be incredibly grateful if you were to subscribe. And yeah, if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So as far as the week is concerned, these are the positions at midnight on Monday the 27th. And the week starts off with the moon in Capricorn, and sun is, of course, in Aquarius. And that is a reminder that we are building up to a new moon. And also at the start of the week, we have Saturn making a semi-square to Pluto. We're probably starting to feel this already, but there is Saturn, and where's Pluto gone? Pluto's just disappeared. Oh yeah, Pluto's here. So Saturn and Pluto are 45 degrees apart. 45 degrees is an important angle. It's a dynamic angle. And Saturn and Pluto represents quite a lot of tension, I would have said. Saturn is about us trying to hold things together. Pluto is a transformative energy that might undermine our best efforts, and it might feel that really something has to give, and it is quite intense. And probably in my next video I'll be talking in detail about this Saturn semi-square Pluto, and it's not just a one-day wonder. We're probably starting to feel it already, and over the next few days, early next week, we'll really start to feel the power of this Saturn semi-square Pluto. Then on Tuesday, Mercury changes sign. Mercury moves into Aquarius. So Sun is already in Aquarius, and Mercury joins it in Aquarius along with Pluto. And of course, the moment Mercury moves into Aquarius, it makes a conjunction to Pluto. So what that means is that there is an increasing air emphasis in the chart. We have a planet in an Earth sign. Mercury has been in an Earth sign since, I think it went into Capricorn January the 6th. So it moves into Aquarius, and we've got Jupiter in Gemini. So there might be a little bit more flow, at least in a mental sense, in terms of ideas. But Aquarius is a fixed sign, and Mercury in Aquarius, it's not a bad place. Someone suggested on the comments that maybe Mercury was exalted in Aquarius. Mercury's not exalted in Aquarius. Mercury is strong in Aquarius, especially by night, because Aquarius is an air sign, and according to one scheme of rulerships, Mercury rules the air signs by night, and Saturn rules the air signs by day. So there is a certain amount of strength there, but to say that Mercury is exalted in Aquarius is a modernism. And one problem that Mercury might have to face in Aquarius is that it's just too fixed. It's just a bit stubborn in Aquarius. It's not like Leo. Mercury is not in its detriment or in its fall in Leo, but I sometimes feel that Mercury in Leo can have a few problems, especially if it's combust. Look at poor Meghan Markle. She's got Mercury in Leo quite close to her sun, and she finds it very difficult to make good decisions. So Mercury in Aquarius, by contrast, isn't quite so bad. And also on Tuesday we've got the Moon moving into Aquarius, so really we get a real dose of Aquarius there with Moon, Mercury, Sun in Aquarius. You can really say that the Aquarius season is starting, and we then begin the build up to the new moon. And on Wednesday there is a new moon in Aquarius, and I believe the first new moon in Aquarius, or usually the only new moon in Aquarius. Sometimes you can get, I suppose, a new moon right at the beginning and right at the end of the sign, is the Chinese New Year. And I'm not into Chinese astrology. I don't really know anything about Chinese astrology. I know that might seem a bit contradictory given the fact that I do an I Ching reading every day, but no, Chinese astrology, I've never really got into it. I'm not making any judgment on Chinese astrology, but I do know about the Chinese New Year, and I do know that, or at least I was told that people using Chinese astrology, or perhaps from a Chinese culture, may like to put things off until after the new moon, after the beginning of the Chinese New Year. And so that seems to me to be a good policy. It's always a good policy to put things off until after the new moon. So the beginning of a Chinese New Year, it may well be a fortunate time where things start to move again. Maybe things are starting to feel a bit stuck. They do feel a bit stuck, actually. Things haven't quite got going yet, and I think things should be better after the new moon. But I haven't really looked at it in detail. When I do my forecast for Wednesday, I will be looking at the new moon in detail. Then on Thursday, it's quite an action-packed week. Uranus comes to a standstill. Uranus is direct. So Uranus is the planet of revolutions and earthquakes and radical change, and it has been moving backwards for some time, and now at 23 degrees 16 minutes Taurus, it stops its backwards journey, grinds to a halt, and gets ready to go forward into late Taurus. And I will be talking about what it means for Uranus to be stationary and who it might affect, and I'll be talking about that next week, sort of Wednesday or Thursday. Then over the weekend we have a lot of aspects involving the Sun, Venus, Neptune, because we've got a Venus-Neptune conjunction on over the weekend of Saturday the 1st, Sunday the 2nd. We've got Venus-Neptune conjunction. We've got Sun semi-squaring that Venus-Neptune conjunction. So Sun, Venus, Neptune are all together. And over the weekend, it could be very imaginative. It could be very artistic. But there is scope there for deception. and we have to be a bit careful with other people over the weekend, and other people, whoever they might be, people making claims, people trying to persuade us to do something that maybe we don't want to do. And we must be careful also about deceiving ourselves. We might decide that something really is worth going for, something can be worthwhile, but it may just be may turn out to be a bit of a delusion. And then there is Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth has just been confirmed as United States Secretary of Defense, and it was a very close decision. In fact, J.D. Vance who is, I think, as Vice President, he's Chair of the Senate. Is that right? Speaker of the Senate? I get confused. I'm not a great expert on American politics, but he had the casting vote. And Hegseth made it just. And we do have a time of birth for him, and which is kind of useful, which is nice. And Secretary of Defense, it's an important role. It's an important role, but it's not like the Secretary of State, or of course the President. So it's not the most important role in the cabinet, but it is important in the sense that he is kind of now a representative of the US Armed Forces. And I think he was a major in the Minnesota National Guard, or one of the National Guards, so he has had experience in the military, and he's been to Iraq and Afghanistan, so I suppose that makes sense to have someone as Secretary of Defense who's had military experience. And I think he's a contributor. He was a contributor to Fox News, and there have been all sorts of allegations about him in terms of his behavior and alcohol abuse and so on. I have no opinion on that, but that was perhaps one of the reasons why it was such a close-run thing, his confirmation, and there were prominent Republicans who didn't want him to be confirmed. I don't think they were really thinking about it from the right perspective. I think if you had access to astrology and you were making that decision, you probably would not have gone for Pete Hegseth, and I'll explain why. So here's his chart. He was born June 6, 1980, at 8:28 p.m. I was really quite surprised that there was a time chart available for him. And he's a Gemini. Nothing wrong with being a Gemini. Sun in Gemini in the 7th, though. I mean, I think with that Sun in Gemini in the 7th, maybe he has a lot to do with other people. Perhaps he's quite good at getting on with other people. That can be the case with Sun in Gemini in the 7th. If you've got a seventh house Sun, the other can be quite important. And the Moon in Pisces. That Moon in Pisces is conjunct Skeet. So Skeet is, of course, the planet, the star of disasters, shipwrecks, things going wrong, and he's got the moon there, and so that might make him a little bit accident prone. And he has got moon square Venus. So moon square Venus, I mean, that could say something about his relationships. Kennedy had moon square Venus, and moon square Venus can represent two views of the feminine. In the Kennedy's case, you saw the moon Venus square as maybe two aspects. Marilyn Monroe and Jackie Kennedy. I don't know quite how you'd see that. The sort of one aspect of a female is quite sort of wanton and wild, and then you've got Venus, which would be I don't know which way it goes, moon square Venus. But there are two aspects of the feminine, and so it might be difficult for someone who has moon square Venus to have a unified view of the feminine. And that moon square Venus is being hit by Neptune. So Neptune is getting very close to his moon. And so I don't know what that Neptune means. And in fact, Neptune has already passed the conjunction to the Moon, and it's now making us where it has it. Where is Neptune right now? So Neptune actually is at. I'll be looking at his transits in a bit more detail later. So Neptune is now at. Neptune is at 2756. So Neptune is moving towards the conjunction of his Moon. Saturn is also moving towards the conjunction of his Moon. So we'll see how that Moon works out. He also has that Moon is actually conjunct the United Kingdom's Moon. So there may be quite a lot of work to do in dealing with Britain and its Starmer government, and there could be disagreements there. He may not get on with the British defence establishment. He may get on very well with them, but there is more work than perhaps he imagines in terms of dealing with Britain, and because it said in the 1066 chart, England certainly had the moon conjunct the moon in Pisces, very late Pisces. So those are a few thoughts about his chart. But what really bothers me about his chart is its linkage with the United States' chart. So Hegseth has his ascendant at 1147 Sagittarius. Now let's have a look at the USA's chart. 1221 Sagittarius. So his ascendant completely reflects the United States' horoscope. And so let's actually look at the two charts side by side. So if we put the USA in the middle and Hegseth on the outer wheel, there is the ascendant right there. The midheaven, his midheaven is at 4 degrees Libra, and the United States' midheaven is at 1 degree Libra. So close fit. So you might then be saying, well, that's great, isn't it? He has a natural association with the United States. And so it's not surprising that he has become Secretary of Defense. But the problem is Uranus. And the problem is, what happens when Uranus gets to 12 degrees, 12 degrees Gemini. Now, that's not immediately. Now, it may be that Hegseth is not going to last. I mean, that would probably be the best result. But what if Hegseth stays as Secretary of Defense for the duration, throughout his term? Well, what happens is this. Let me show you. Here is the Mars-Uranus conjunction. There's a Mars-Uranus conjunction on June the 23rd, 2028. And if you compare that conjunction with Hegseth's, with the United States' chart, we know that conjunction is right on the United States' descendant. The ascendant-descendant axis, particularly the descendant in the United States' chart, is about going to war. And I have said that the last 3 times that the Uranus crossed the United States' descendant, there was a war. First time it crossed its descendant was when it was born, July the 4th, 1776. That was the colonial war. Next time was during the Civil War, and the next time after that was during the Second World War, and now it's happening again. And so it's a difficult time for the United States, 2028, with that, particularly with the Mars-Uranus conjunction on its descendant. And then Hegseth at that time will also have Mars-Uranus on his descendant, obviously, because he's got his ascendant in pretty much the same place as the United States has. So there you see the problem. And so I'm thinking that at an unconscious level, at a collective level, the United States, by choosing Pete Hegseth as its Secretary of defense is preparing for war at an unconscious level. Now, it may be that Hegseth doesn't last. There's some scandal, something happens, and over the next year or two, and he's not in place as Secretary of Defense by 2028. But if he is in place, it really does look quite worrying. So that's the longer term picture. Just thought it'd be interesting to see what was happening when he was actually confirmed. So so here going back to here's Hegseth's chart. So I just wanted to look at some of his transits at the time of his confirmation. I don't know the exact time he was confirmed. I'm sure if I'd looked harder, I could have found it. I'm sure. So he has his descendant at 1147 Gemini. So Jupiter was on his descendant, exactly on his descendant, as he was being confirmed. And yeah, in one sense that's good. I mean, that's getting luck from other people, from the outside, other people confirming him. But that descendant, that Jupiter on it, is also hitting the United States' descendant. It feels that it's kind of fated here that the United States is going to get itself involved in a major conflict, and that Jupiter conjunct the descendant is I think worrying. And there's also the position of Mars. Look at Mars. Mars is at 12 degrees 47 Virgo. So Mars was. Sorry, that's his Mars was at 1247 Virgo. Saturn. Sorry, what was I talking about? So the point about that Mars is that he has Mars square his ascendant in his natal chart, and Jupiter is squaring his Mars and on his ascendant as he gets confirmation, and that Jupiter has a kind of a 10th house feel to it. Certainly if you were to use the equal house system, or you were to use a whole house system, Mars would be in the 10th rather than in the 9th. So it would be quite an aggressive, assertive Mars, and Jupiter makes a square to that Mars, and so that's him getting the confirmation. And also look at Saturn. Saturn square his Sun. So Saturn square Sun, you might think Saturn square Sun would be not getting the confirmation. But no, Saturn square Sun can be about getting a job, it can be about responsibility, and that's a reminder that Saturn square Sun is not always bad news. You can benefit while that square is happening, and he's a real example of it. At least benefit in the short term. We don't know how this job is really going to turn out for him. I think if he sticks with the job, it's going to be very stressful, and he's going to be having to deal with far more than him and his president imagined. I do think that war and conflict is really the thing that is going to could unwind the Trump presidency. And remember, in the Trump inauguration chart, we've got Mars on the IC, and I don't think it's going to be Trump's fault. I think it's just going to be external factors, and likewise, I don't think it's Hegseth's fault. The Secretary of Defense does not, I believe, make big decisions about foreign policy, but still he has to follow what he's told, and he has to respond to global events. So yeah, it does, to my mind, look difficult, but just maybe it's all fated, and you can see the fated aspect of it if you look at the solar arc directions. So if you're turning to the solar arc directions, you see that his solar arc directed north node. So this is like moving his north node, moving all his planets 45 degrees, because he's 44, 45, because he's 44 years old. He's going to be 45 next birthday, and the directed north node is on his midheaven, and in a way that is his destiny. This is what he's supposed to be, what he's supposed to be doing. So maybe there was just no choice. Note also directed true Black Moon Lilith on his ascendant. Is that a good aspect to get this job? I mean, his directed true Black Moon Lilith. I don't even know whether you can use directed true Black Moon Lilith, but directed true Black Moon Lilith square his Mars and conjunct his ascendant at the moment. As he becomes it, maybe he won't last long. I mean, I haven't really asked that question, but I think for America's sake, I think it would be useful if Hegseth would not last long, because you do not want to have Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense in 2028, because that, to my mind, would really indicate that America could be going to war. But that's Pete Hegseth. I've got nothing against him. It's not his fault that there's this line-up with America's chart, and Uranus is hitting his descendant and America's descendant at the same time in 2028. But sometimes these things just can't be avoided. And it's now time to consider things from the perspective of the I Ching. So this I Ching reading, you don't have to have it. If you don't want your I Ching read, you can just stop watching this video. It only applies to people watching the I Ching section of this video. My I Ching reading is divided up into 4 sections. I start off with a general section, then I look at money, then career, and finally relationships. I ask the question. There's the dog. Dog is ready to go, and I ask the question, what is the week starting on Monday, January the 27th, 2025, going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 26, which is the taming power of the great. Some things will not be tamed, and the taming power of the great doesn't move. There are no moving lines here, and that may say something about the week. When you've got no moving lines, it does indicate that really not a great deal is going to happen. So in spite of these big events over the week, Uranus going direct, new moon, in spite of all of this, we can't really expect anything dramatic, maybe, because nothing moves anywhere. But this hexagram, the taming power of the great is kind of us to an extent, and it's perhaps talking about our greatness, but we do need to have a certain amount of discipline. There are things that can be done and should be done, but they can be done in a fairly sort of quiet kind of way, and we need to be aware that there are things out there that are greater than ourselves, and you might look at it in terms of the past. We are part of the past. We might not want to be part of the past, but the past has an influence on us, and the way things were done in the past should perhaps be honoured. And if we do things how we used to do them, how our parents or grandparents used to do them, if we follow tradition, that is the right way of addressing the day's challenges. And the Wilhelm translation of the I Ching talks about holding firm. We hold to what we have. And according to the Wilhelm translation of the I Ching, holding firm has 3 dimensions. And one dimension is holding together. So we need to take what we have, particularly the people around us, and hold together with them. Our family, for example, our close friends. It's not necessarily a time for being adventurous, but looking for excitement. We have to really stick to the people who we know and trust. So that's one aspect of holding firm. Another aspect is holding back. So we might be tempted to do something, the taming power of the great, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And a bit of restraint could be very useful and certainly desirable. And finally, the holding firm relates to nourishment, making sure that we are nourished, that maybe we are looking after ourselves and the people close to us. So we might have the power this week, but that doesn't actually mean that we should be using it. And there are temptations, and it may well be that the underlying theme of this hexagram is about the temptations we are able to resist. And the nuclear hexagram for this hexagram, the hexagram in the middle, is the marrying maiden. Now, this is not the hexagram we have. The marrying maiden is not a particularly fortunate hexagram. It's about being in too much of a hurry. The symbol of a marrying maiden is a young woman who's very keen to get married. And this may be the underlying picture. We are keen to do things. We are in a hurry to do things. We want to do things. We think it's now February almost. We're moving from January to February. We've got to get things moving. And that's what we're resisting against, and we have to somehow hold back. Holding back is an important theme of this hexagram. But I do think this is something we can do because there are no moving lines. So we shouldn't be expecting anything to happen, and we should avoid doing anything that is too dynamic, and we should really focus on what we have and relate to the past, the wisdom of the past. We shouldn't just embrace the new just for the sake of it. So that's the general picture. Turning to money, and taming power of the great is obviously talking about restraint. And from a financial perspective, I would have said it's quite simple. This week you should do nothing. Maybe you've had financial plans, or you were planning on doing things with money, spending things with money, investing money, or allocating money. Of course, I'm not giving financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. But it needs discipline, and in terms of money, think about how money was dealt with in the past. How in your childhood money was dealt with. Those were the days when people saved up for things. They didn't just buy things with their credit card. And every day is Christmas, isn't it, when you've got Amazon? And restraint really does matter. And the taming power of the great can be about your restraining influences as well, your restraining influence on other people. So it may be that other people are very keen to get going. They're in a hurry to spend money. They're in a hurry to buy things. They're in a hurry to make financial commitments. And it just may be a time to just calm everything down, say, no, it doesn't have to be done right now. We can wait. And if you are waiting for money, if you're in a hurry for money, then I'm not convinced that this is going to be the week where it happens. And that should not upset you. It's a time to wait. There is a new moon this week, and the new moon is a new beginning, but the new moon is also a time of silence. We need to just understand, what's going on. If you think about it, you've got the new moon on, when is it? On Wednesday. So beginning of a week, you've got that period when the moon is waning, when you really shouldn't really be doing anything before the new moon, and then right after the new moon, the moon is too close to the sun for comfort, and so you have your ideas, you kind of know what you want to do, but are you ready? Do you really want to do it? So with money, it really is important to hold back, and just remember that nuclear hexagram underlying it is the marrying maiden, and the marrying maiden may be about someone who is in a hurry. They're in a rush financially. Or what if someone's rushing you to make a decision, rushing you to sign on a dotted line? No, just hold firm. And if you hold firm, that is the right thing to do. And by holding firm, you'll be looking after your financial interests. And then we move on to career and business and your job, if you have a job. And again, I don't think a great deal is going on, because the taming power of the great, it doesn't move, no moving lines, and discipline is important, and you have to hold to what you've got and be happy with what you've got. And if you're preparing some big initiative or advancement, or perhaps you're looking for a new job, don't be in too much of a hurry. And with no moving lines, you cannot expect much to happen. And in terms of your work, the work you're doing should pretty much be what you always did. It's not a time for taking on new types of work, because maybe it's connected with the fact we've got a new moon. A new moon is a beginning, so things are going to get better. But right now, this week, it's very, very sensitive, and you need to kind of look to the past and how you did things in the past and how you were successful in the past, rather than be in a desperate hurry to embrace the challenges of the future. I mean, you might have to, in the end, embrace those challenges, but not right now. And if you are in a position of responsibility with the taming power of the great, it may be that you have to hold other people back. So people under you, employees, people you've hired, they're in a hurry to get going on things, but you have to say, no, this is not the right time. Let's just wait and perhaps do some exploration, some thinking, and look back on the past, and that is the right approach. And finally, there is relationships. It's a similar picture. You should not expect anything wonderful to happen, but I don't think nothing bad is going to happen. It's not a bad hexagram, the taming of the great, the taming power of the great. It's about holding to what you've got. And one of the aspects of this hexagram, which a Wilhelm translation talked about, was holding together. Consider the relationships you have, and those relationships that you have are supporting. And so the people you know are the people you can trust, and it can be about mutual trust, people helping each other to be secure and safe, and not feeling that you do have to be in a hurry to make anything happen. And so it's very much a sort of status quo in terms of relationships, just holding back. Take what is good about existing relationships, and don't feel that you have to move to new relationships, whatever the nature of those relationships. And we shouldn't forget that the nuclear hexagram of the taming power of the great is hexagram 54, which is a marrying maiden. This is the underlying picture. The marrying maiden is a woman who's in a hurry to get married, a hurry to form new relationships. She wants to be attached, and it's not a fortunate hexagram because there's something rather indecent about that hurry. So whatever the relationship is, don't be in a hurry, and be very wary of people who are in a hurry to form relationships or to make relationships stronger. It's not the right approach. The right approach is the taming power of the great. holding to what you have and not feeling that you have to intensify anything, to take initiatives, and no moving lines here. So hopefully, actually, in terms of relationships, nothing much will happen. It will just be that existing relationships will become stronger and more supportive, but in quite a gentle, low-profile kind of way. And that's it. I don't think I've got anything else to say about this week, so thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be really, really grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.